Good morning, folks. Welcome to Tales of the 39. It is a wonderful spring day in April, as you might be able to tell if you can hear those birds singing in the background. Um, Today, I'm going to tell you about a very special place and tell you a little story that came from that place, although there were many stories, but only got time for one per video, really. But that place was a game store in Warrensburg, Missouri in the 1980s and 1990s. It was called I'm Game. And that game store had a basement. It was on Main Street in Warrensburg, Missouri, and it was in what used to be a men's clothing store in classic downtown Americana Main Street. Don't know exactly what time period it came from, but that Main Street could have been from the 1930s or 40s or whatever. Just very classic, old style front stores and buildings and stuff. And in the 1980s and 90s, there was a game store there, and it was started by some gentlemen who retired all about the same time from the military at Whiteman Air Force Base, where America has the stealth bomber, which is there near Warrensburg, Missouri, and Knob Noster, Missouri. And they kind of they wanted to live the dream, and they kind of pooled their retirement and opened up a game store. So they had been involved in D&D since the 70s. Military guys doing wargaming and stuff. And so now by this point it was the 80s, and they opened up a store. And in that store, that old-timey building, there was a basement, and that basement is what I've named my company after. So my entertainment company is called the Game Shop's Basement, and that's why, because that Game Shop's Basement was after the store closed, because and I don't mean closed permanently, although it did do that eventually, but I mean when it was just closed because it wasn't business hours, that kind of closed, not closed forever. But when it was closed just because it wasn't business hours, that basement was pretty much, for years, that Game Shop's Basement was open for gaming pretty much 24/7, 365. There were games there that started at 3 a.m. and ran until after the sun came up. And that was the kind of like the D&D and other games. There was, before, in the earlier 80s, before Warhammer 40K became the big miniatures tabletop mini war gaming game, it was BattleTech was the big one before Warhammer 40K came along. And so there was BattleTech, there was Shadowrun, there was all these games, and there were legendary Illuminati card games down in that basement and stuff. And one of the game owners, he was kind of his name was Dan, one of the sweat equity owners, because I don't think he had contributed as much financially to getting the store open, but he virtually lived there. He had a real house. I saw it, I had actually been to his real house, but he wasn't at his real house very often. He had a cot in the office of the game store. And there was gaming going on pretty much 24/7, 365 for years. And so one of the, and obviously that the memories of that place are kind of special to me because, that's why, I've named my entertainment company the Game Shop's Basement. But one day in the Game Shop's Basement, there was a friend of mine was at our table, the same table that I run now. It's been 39 years that I've been running the same Dungeons & Dragons game table. And if you're interested in that, because as I record this, we have some open seats available. We don't always have open seats available, but we do, right now. And down below the video here on YouTube, you'll be able to see some contact information. You can hang out with us, watch some games, or you can even play. We have some open slots. So, but it's game's been going on for 39 years. And that's kind of what the current format of this channel is with Tales of the 39. So let's give you a Tale of the 39 that took place in the Game Shop's Basement. So in the first edition days, there was a hardcover book, and I guess the name isn't very politically correct these days, but it was called Oriental Adventures. So these days, I kind of, instead of using the word Oriental, because there's people that don't really like that word anymore, I'll usually say something like otaku adventures, or Asia-inspired adventures, or anime-inspired adventures, or something. The same thing. It's just, a word that people aren't, just using a word that people aren't quite so sensitive about to say the same thing. Because instead of knights and, wizards, and instead of a more Eurocentric version of medieval fantasy, it's a more Asian-inspired medieval fantasy. You've got samurai and stuff like that, and ninjas. So, different culture, different part of the world. But there was a gentleman who was playing a ninja, and the way that ninja worked in the first edition book for it was, if you were a ninja, you automatically were a dual-classed character, automatically, because the other class was your cover class. And you were to never, ever, ever let anybody know outside your clan, NPCs or maybe even other player characters, as long as they were in your clan, anybody outside your clan was not to know you were a ninja, obviously. And if they did, you had a very short time you were supposed to kill them before they spread the information. And so it was, and you would lose your honor if it got out that you were a ninja and everything. You would have betrayed the secrecy of your clan and whatnot. So there was a gentleman at my table, and he had a ninja character, and he had this very unique strategy. So I'm going to sound really old like Grandpa Simpson, back in those days, as was the style at the time. But, this was the world, this was the 80s and early 90s. This was the world before cell phones and laptops and stuff like that. And so, these days, people keep their character sheets in the cloud. But back then, character sheets were actually on paper. And there was, and a lot of times, avid players would have a lot of information, or they'd have a lot of characters that play a lot of different games. They'd actually keep a folder, with their characters and all this stuff. So my friend who was playing the ninja, he had a stack of papers in front of him, not just one sheet, but a stack, and that wasn't uncommon, right? At that time in that crowd. And he had a decoy character sheet. He had a character sheet that represented what his character would be like with just his cover class. Like if his character was not a ninja and his stat block just represented his cover class only. And that was his cover sheet, or his fake decoy sheet. And he would put that on top of the stack while he played. His real character sheet, the one that actually represented his character's real stat block and actually showed everything about his character, including the ninja parts, that was just a little deeper in the stack. Not necessarily at the exact bottom, but, just somewhere in the stack a little deeper. And so when he got up from the table to visit the soda machine, or the snack bar where the store sold candy bars and stuff, or he needed to go outside for a smoke break, or he needed to use the restroom or whatever, for whatever reason that he needed to leave the table, there would be, as he put it, roving eyes. There would be other players that would, want to look at somebody's character sheet when they left. And it's not a nice part of human nature, and, probably wasn't the most honest or best thing to do as a gamer, but, humans are what humans are. Human nature is what it is. So there were roving eyes. And so he preserved his secrecy, as a player, that his character was a ninja. And as the DM, I kept the secret too. And so we, I think we kept that secret for well over a year of real life time. And maybe a couple of years in the game, keeping track of game time. And, because I had a separate calendar for the game. And at that point, I was so meticulously keeping track of time in the game. At one point, 3 years had gone by here in real life, and 7 years had gone by in the game. Because in the game, you have a lot of travel montages and stuff, where the party's traveling on the map for 2 weeks, and we kind of skip over that 2 weeks or whatever, or maybe just roll a couple random encounters to represent, monsters that they found in the wilderness during the 2 weeks of traveling on the map or whatever. Or there was downtime crafting time where the party would have downtime to craft some items or something like that, and maybe according to the crafting formulas that we're using, it took like 3 weeks for the mage to craft this new magic item or something like that. So because there were montages and traveling and skips and crafting time and stuff, like 7 years would go by in the game universe while 3 years went by in real life. And but I used to have people pick out on the game world calendar a birthday for their character. And when their birthday came up in universe, we actually celebrated their character's birthday, like, in the game. Like, that was how silly we were, like, in my younger days of D&D. And, I mean, I could still do that. I mean, if you listening to this showed up at our table now, and you were into that, and you were like, yeah, I'd like my character to have a birthday on the in-universe calendar and stuff, and I would do that for you. I mean, I'm not quite the silly young game master that I used to be. I'm not. If you want it for your character, we'll do it for you. But I'm not quite as pedantic about those things as I used to be. But yeah, no. After about a year of real life time, it just wasn't necessarily that. I guess he decided that he had his fun keeping his secret, and then I guess maybe he wanted the shock value fun of shocking people, so he kind of let it out that he was a ninja and everything, and he shocked people all right, especially since he'd been keeping the secret for like over a year of real life time. People were like, oh my gosh, I never knew, but that explains this and that explains that. So that was kind of a little story of just some of the things we used to do back in the day in the game shop's basement. Now, if you'd like to play in our games, there'll be contact information down below. And I do write sci-fi and fantasy, as well as DM it for D&D and other role-playing games. So there'll be some information down below for some of my books. I just signed a contract yesterday for a book that I'm especially proud of, and I'll have that information down below. It is paranormal investigations, paranormal mysteries. So if you're into SCP or X-Files or Stranger Things or Warehouse 13, horror movies, stuff like that, that might be something for you. And I'll, from time to time, I'll include little commercials here on the channel for other books that I write, because I also do superheroes and more straight up D&D fantasy and stuff like that. But we will see you next time on Tales of the 39 to describe a 39 years and still going D&D campaign, because, well, I've just had no life.